Springtime salutations, Cider Club supporters. I'm Cougar, and this is Jacinth, and we're coming to you today from the Fin River Orchard to introduce the Crow Club lineup. And we have, as usual, some very exciting ciders to get started with. So I think I'll kick it off with the first one here. This is a longtime favorite for a lot of us at Fin River, especially so because it was the first cider that Fin River ever produced, the Artisan Sparkling. And what really sets this one apart from the rest of the lineup is the methodology used to create it, the méthode champenoise, which is, of course, the style used to make a champagne. So it gets a very lovely, very light effervescence, and it's a lovely cider for any sort of toasts or just sipping on its own for a special occasion.
Yeah, super bright and clean. Dual fermentation, so it ferments once in a tank, then it ferments again in the bottle, racked and riddled to remove all the sediment, and just a bright, clean champagne. Super fun. Next down the line, we're moving over to one of our Orchard Series ciders, the Golden Russet. And before I talk about the cider, I always love to talk about how my good friend Cougar actually designed and drew the label.
Oh,
so he's a very talented artist. But this is also one of my favorite ciders in that I really love the Golden Russet apples specifically. They're just a very beautiful eating apple, very much balanced between bitter and tart with a little bit of that residual sugar kicking through, and the cider very much reflects that. It does have a combination of other bitter sharps and bitter sweets in there, kind of routing out the flavor. Things like Carmen de Sonneville, Ashmead's Kernel, just other fun favorites from the orchard. So you've seen it around if you've been a club member for a while, and if you haven't, I highly recommend enjoying this one around things like Thanksgiving dinner, white meats, chickens, and things like that.
Or just on its own. This is one of my favorite sipping ciders. Yeah, I'd say this is definitely like I like to say this is the fancy white tablecloth cider, because it does have an elegance to it. And then the farmstead is more like the picnic blanket in the grass cider, because it's just a wonderful, approachable cider. This one is kind of our Olympic Peninsula melange. We gather apples from all around every harvest season, and we're getting fruit from our own orchard, from local orchards, donated fruit from members of our community, and it makes a very wonderful taste of the Quimper Peninsula every year. So this is always a fun one to try seasonally, to see the variations from year to year. And we leave a little bit of the lees in there to give it a good full-bodied, almost like Belgian finish. So I'm very excited for this one to come back.
It's definitely one of my favorite ciders, definitely one of the few that I can drink a lot of. Not that I drink a lot of any cider, but just really nice, mellow flavor, not terribly bitter at all. And like Cougar said, a great reflection of just the apples that people would tend to pick off of an apple tree in the area, and kind of what does that make. So moving down the line to the Honey Meadow cider, one of our seasonal botanical releases. I really love this series of ciders. There's actually 2 on the menu this month. And they're a great reflection of where we started, which is with sustainable agriculture and organic farming. And they kind of reflect the seasonal availability of crops. So for our spring seasonal, the Honey Meadow features chamomile, lemon balm, and dandelions. Not root, right? Just dandelion.
And roasted burdock root.
And roasted burdock root. That's the root. So it's a really fun dance between something kind of herbal and not necessarily sharp, but a nice kind of sweet back to it. It's definitely a good springtime cider, definitely a sunny day cider.
That one, I always think of like a good sunset porch sipping cider, because it's just kind of sweet and floral and really sensory. Mm-hmm. It's a lovely one. And next up on our lineup, we have the Saskaronia, which as a crew selection is one of these special limited releases. This one gets its moniker from the blend of aronia berries and Saskatoon berries. And after a little bit of Googling today, I learned a bit more about the Saskatoon berries, which are really interesting. I think it's cool to kind of look up the legacy of this fruit, because they're not as popular, but they're native to the Northwest and to North America as a whole, so you can find them all over the place. In fact, Saskatchewan gets its name from the same First Nations Cree language that Saskatoon berries do. Mm-hmm. They're getting a little more recognition these days as a health food berry, so not that there's any transitive properties there, but you never know. This one, the addition of the Saskatoon and aronia berries gives it a really complex very light flavor. There's a little bit of bitterness on the finish, a lot of intrigue, some nice hints of fruit throughout, and just a really intriguing, really interesting cider.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to go back for another glass of this one later.
Yeah, definitely shocking, like the first time you drink it, because it has this kind of almost vinegary twanginess up front, but it's followed by such a clean finish and then a little bit of a nutty outbreath that just really kind of took me by surprise. It's like it hits your mouth and you're like, okay, here we go, and then it just, you know, it's really not as wild of a ride as I expected it. It's a very nice cider. Last up on the menu, we're going to move down to another seasonal botanical release, and this is probably one of the more anticipated seasonals that we make. It is the Lavender Black Currant Cider. So a lovely blend of organic Washington dessert apples that have been sweetened up and kind of blended with organic black currant juice, and then introduced to a little bit of lavender that has been coming from Wilderby Farm, if I'm not mistaken, which is a local farm here in Port Townsend. So I tend to look for lavenders that are a lot less pungent, things like Royal Velvet, which don't have a whole ton of essential oils in them that aren't going to like make a really soapy flavor. So nothing to be afraid of necessarily. But
it's a lovely subtle lavender.
Yeah, nice and subtle. Really, really fruit forward like the black currant, but again, that nice kind of herbal floral finish, which really, it's not bitter. It's kind of like the antithesis to bitterness, right? It's like
smooth, complex,
yeah,
chocolatey almost.
Yeah.
Velvet is a good word for it. Royal Velvet really lives true to its name. I'm looking forward to kind of doing something a little unprecedented. Well, not unprecedented. We've done it before. Remember the ice cream floats with the cider?
Yes.
Using lavender ice cream with the lavender cider.
Yes.
That is an awesome way to go. Good summertime sipper.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
That's my plan for it.
Yeah, cool. And of course, a subtle nod to our neighbors over in Squim, the Lavender Festival. So, yeah. Looking forward to seeing you out here on the farm, and don't hesitate to stop by and ask more questions about all of our products.
Thanks for joining in today.